this is a story he's been on for a very long time. In fact, when I first met Doc, he was handling things in this small Georgia town. And now Georgia mayor, city officials, been indicted on election interference. Give you the details. While Doc is out today, he wrote an op-ed on rolling out. It details this story. Very interesting read. You got to check it out. May 28th, 2025, Camilla, Georgia. Have you heard of it? Mayor Kelvin Owens, pictured there, interim city manager Cheryl Ford, and former election superintendent Rhunette Williford, all arrested on charges of election fraud and conspiracy. But these officials may have been unjustly arrested. As Dr. Richey details in the op-ed, this unprecedented move represents more than a local political dispute. It marks the latest chapter in Southwest Georgia's 157-year struggle against systemic voter suppression and judicial complicity in corporate and political power structures. So if you know anything about Georgia, and I'm going to get, this is an incredible read. This could be like our number one product that we export. Voter suppression, founded here in Georgia. And so Camilla's no stranger to that, as Doc artfully notes. To fully grasp the gravity of this moment, we must confront Camilla's blood-stained history of racial terrorism and analyze these charges through the prism of federal voting rights law, Georgia's election code, and a disturbing national pattern of weaponizing legal systems against Black electoral empowerment. So Doc has laid the foundation there. What else does he note? Well, it's just a few years ago, 2018, that the City of Camilla, which is located in deep South Georgia, removed the fence that separated Black and white residents in the city-owned cemetery. You get in the picture? City at that time also did not employ one Black police officer, even though the city is majority African American. Dr. Richey goes on to say the arrests have shocked the community and raised serious concerns about the ongoing targeting of public officials who upheld the integrity of our local electoral process. We have been informed that none of the three officials will be allowed to appear before a judge until Monday at 9 a.m. Are you getting the picture? A delay for which Magistrate Judge, this is his name, Judge Bubba Lamb, has not provided clear justification. I know what Bubba's up to, I think. These arrests appear politically motivated and retaliatory. Central to the controversy is the candidacy of Mr. Ventura Pollard, who was deemed qualified to run for office by both Mrs. Williford and Ms. Ford, despite Judge Gary McCorvey initially ordering Mr. Pollard to remove his name from the ballot. When that effort failed, he directed the election superintendent to forcibly remove Pollard from the race. Talk about an activist judge. After Mrs. Williford refused to comply with what many believed to be an unlawful order, Judge McCorvey recused himself. And in comes Judge McClain, assigned to the case. Judge McClain escalated pressure by threatening arrest if Mr. Pollard was not removed. Armed deputies were sent by the local sheriff. Who's the sheriff? Boss Hogg? To serve Mrs. Williford with this directive, an act widely viewed as intimidation. November 4th, 2024, both Rhunette Williford and Cheryl Ford resigned their positions effective immediately, citing the untenable pressure and threats. On the same date, the City Council voted, under the advice of the City Attorney and guidance from the Secretary of State's office, not to proceed with the election to avoid incurring a fine due to the absence of a certified election superintendent. Oh, so big Georgia, the state had to intervene here. The charges against Mayor Owens, Ford, and Williford ostensibly stem from Georgia Code 21-2-566. Prohibits election interference through threats, unauthorized ballot handling, or poll obstruction. However, the application of this statute raises constitutional concerns under 52 U.S.C. 10307. I wouldn't mess with Dr. Richey. He knows his stuff. He knows the statutes. He goes on to explain that it explicitly bars intimidation of election officials and voters. The officials' alleged crime appears to be the refusal to comply with McCorvey's order to remove Pollard from the ballot, an order potentially violating both the First Amendment's freedom of association, the 14th Amendment's equal protection clause, and other statutory elements. Now, this selective prosecution mirrors Reconstruction era abuses of legal systems to suppress Black political participation. 1868, white legislators weaponized bogus election fraud claims to expel Black lawmakers from the Georgia General Assembly. Yes, we were there, all over the place. Right after slavery. Same body that now oversees significant election administration rules and laws. Current charges eerily parallel the 1871 Colfax Massacre prosecutions, where federal officials charged Black voters with insurrection for defending themselves against attacks. And see, back then there was no tan president to pardon them and say that they deserve reparations, okay? You're done. You're done. The forced resignations of Williford and Ford under threat of arrest, which is cited in the official press release from the current mayor pro tem of Camilla, G.A. Dwayne Burley, resurrects the Mississippi Plan tactics of 1875, where white Democrats used economic coercion, violence to drive Black officials from office. Their replacements, cancellation of the November 2024 special election, ostensibly to avoid fines, creates a modern analog to Reconstruction era voter purges, disproportionately disenfranchising Camilla's Black majority. Furthermore, Magistrate Judge Bubba Lamb's decision to delay the official's first court appearance until June 3rd seems to violate Georgia's Uniform Court Rule 7.1 requiring prompt hearings while potentially contravening 52 USC 10307B's prohibition on intimidating election officials through legal delays. This procedural abuse mirrors 19th century legal lynchings, where Black defendants faced rush trials or indefinite detentions. Situation represents not only a potential abuse of judicial authority, but also a dangerous precedent where election officials are criminalized for ensuring fair access to the democratic process. We call for transparency, Doc goes on to say, immediate answers regarding the judicial delays and a full investigation into what appears to be a politically driven campaign to silence lawful election officials. So Doc has done a beautiful job outlining this. Well, as I can tell you, early in my getting to know Dr. Richey, I remember he had just come back from Camilla. He was doing a story for another network that we were working for. And he sat down next to my desk and he said, "You won't believe what I just encountered." He said, "Sharon, it was like a trip back in time." Okay? That's a trip. Well, Doc is well aware of what goes on in rural Georgia, but this was a trip back in time, both white and Black people justifying this throwback to a painful era. Okay? We see portions of it today, but this was stunning, he said. The cemetery and the like. What say you about this? Because I'm gonna tell you something. He may be down there today. Is that why he's off? Okay. I can assure you he'll go back there. At first glance of what's going on here and how Doc laid it out was how it mirrors so much of 100, 150 years ago. Your thoughts on these places still in firm existence?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, and I think you know this, the smaller the pond, the more kind of insane and unhinged
That's
the
right.
fish that actually exist in that pond are. And so with these smaller municipalities, like these guys kind of wield disproportionate power. And you might say, oh, they get to just run this small place, but it's still actual people in these small places. And you know, that opens these guys up to exercising a level of tyranny that just doesn't happen in the bigger cities. And this is, again, this is like cartoonish stuff, right?
Yep.
If, I'm from New York, so a lot of people who are from New York, Yankees, if you will, if they've never really spent that much time down south, they might think, it's still like Mississippi Burning, the movie down there, right? Which is just not true. And I think a lot of people might go to some places like Atlanta, like Houston, like Austin, like, even Charleston to a certain extent, and be like, oh, the South is pretty advanced and is nothing like what I thought it was. And that may be true, absolutely, in the bigger cities, but in rural places like Atlanta and like Georgia and Mississippi and Arkansas, that's not necessarily the case, man. A buddy of mine used to actually work in Atlanta, actually played for the Atlanta Falcons. And, he got some advice before moving there. He's like, listen, once you drive 45 minutes from Atlanta, you're now in Georgia, bro. And act accordingly. And I think that reputation, especially throughout Southern Georgia, is absolutely earned, as evidenced by this case here.
Yeah. And as evidenced by Ahmaud Arbery, who's no longer with us, who went for a jog one day. I tell all my associates, some, just talking on the phone, oh, Atlanta's great. But you leave Atlanta proper, and let me tell you something, boy. Okay, they still use that word in some of these places. That's number one, okay? I too tell my friends that you better watch yourself in rural parts of Georgia, not that far outside of Atlanta. Number two, you didn't have to tell us you're from New York. The accent gives you away. Okay, we know, okay, and it's lovely. I love your accent. But this is what we're up against, and a lot of people don't realize that the law it's why you give your kids the talk. You're Black, you know what the talk is. If you're woke, you know what the talk is. Doesn't matter what the law is. Doesn't matter if you did nothing wrong. It's what that officer says, and in this case, in Camilla, it's what these people who believe this is their town think. So when the one judge recused himself, what a joke. And then probably his card playing buddy, the other judge, comes in and acts the same way. It's despicable, but it's not just in the South. I was there, Ferguson, Michael Brown, and I couldn't believe the abuse that's going on in that town until the feds peeked over their shoulder. Still no justice, and now you got this other guy in office saying, let's get rid of these consent decrees and stuff. I thought Doc's op-ed was just expertly written. It spells out a very disturbing era that is today in Camilla, Georgia. And I'm excited that he's staying on the case. Doc is very busy. For him to write that op-ed, he just can't shy away from justice. It means he's coming down there. Be looking for him, boss hog.